good and proper.
Good and proper indeed. What is going on, YouTube? This is Jim back with another video review for you guys today, taking a look at Warhammer 40,000 Darktide. This launched on November 30th and is available only right now on PC. I'm playing it on Xbox Game Pass, but you could buy it also on Steam. In the future, it will be coming out to Xbox Series S and X. It's by Fatshark, the same people who did Vermintide, which I will be talking a little bit about in today's review, because it is a lot of the same cool and bad things we've seen from that game carried over to the next installment. But before I get into the review proper, I would love for you guys to subscribe to the channel. It helps me out a ton, and I'm actually getting close to 5,000 subs. Don't know if you guys saw that or not. So thank you for that, and I'm going to keep making content, and you're going to keep subscribing, and together we're going to get there, okay? So I was a huge fan of Vermintide, which takes place in the Warhammer universe as well, but in the very medieval Warhammer universe. And if you've played that game, which I don't know if Vermintide 1 or 2 are actually still currently available on Xbox Game Pass, but that's where I first played them. You'll notice there are a lot of similar elements, obviously not guns, but you'll notice a lot of the same type of gameplay mechanics. And if you like that kind of stuff, you're going to absolutely love what Fatshark has done here with the Darktide game. But basically, their games are a mixture of amazing, heroic, fun moments, like the clip I started this video review off with. And there is also a fair share of cringe and jank and kind of nonsense. And you kind of have to take them both in stride and understand that this game does have a story, but it's not a very good one. You're going to have more fun playing this with your friends. It does support 4-player co-op, which I highly recommend you take advantage of. You're going to have a lot more fun playing through this content with people who you can communicate with, and especially if you can kind of collaborate a little bit at least on what your builds are going to be, or kind of the overall general direction of where you're going to be engaging enemies. Because you'll find a lot of times, as you're seeing now, all of us are scattered to the wind. And it makes some of these very difficult horde, kind of zombie sections where enemies are pouring out of doors and ceilings and such. It makes them a lot harder when you don't have clear firing lanes established for your team. And when one guy is off on his own, typically that's how you're going to end up failing, because you're not going to be able to revive them in time, and it's just going to be a chain reaction of fighting and dying and such, and it's just going to not be very fun. So keep that in mind as you play through this. You can absolutely play through this on your own. It'll fill the party with bots if you really don't want to play with other people, but it's definitely meant to be played in a party. So the plot is loosely that you are a prisoner who has escaped in this universe. And I say escaped loosely. You're going to very quickly ally with your captors, and you're going to go on these Suicide Squad missions in order to, I guess, earn your keep, honestly. You're going to be able to play one of 4 different character classes, each of which play very different from the other, which I really, really appreciated in terms of overall enjoyment of the game. But each of these 4 character classes have tons of voice lines, and they will constantly, as you're seeing here, because I do play with subtitles on, you'll constantly hear banter between them about calling out enemies that they're attacking, or treasure chests that they've opened, or any of that kind of stuff. And it's really, really cool, because it does really kind of make you feel like you're part of the world, because the first thing you do is you fill out this long questionnaire online of your, different backstory, and then you get to this really cool character creator where you can pick tons of stuff about your character, your height, your race, or not your race, you could your gender, but there's only one character that you can't do that with. This big ogre dude, for some reason, has to be a male. Scars, tattoos, that sort of thing, and then you're kind of thrown into the action and you begin your adventure. The 4 character classes are actually really, really cool. There is a Psyker, there is a Veteran Sharpshooter, there is an Ogre, and that was the one I was talking about. That's the really giant dude, but it has to be a male. And then there is the Zealot Preacher. What's cool is each of them play differently because, yes, they all do have a melee weapon and they all do have a gun, and the game does encourage you to switch between the two very routinely. You know, ammo is somewhat limited at times, so you're going to have to go melee, and then at times you're going to want to be able to take out enemies at range. Most enemies will switch over to melee when you get close. That's actually a very important game mechanic, because ultimately what happens is a lot of times you're going to have to shoot an enemy or run at them closely to get them to stop sniping you, or you'll find these like legendary enemies. Honestly, think of like Left 4 Dead, where there's going to have enemies that are very, very strong, like a tank, or enemies that have flamethrowers, or enemies that cast the net on you and it has to be you know, removed from another player. There's tons of enemy types in there that you're going to encounter, and you're going to have to play with that ranged and melee system in order to engage and take out those encounters well. So I like to play, I've played through all the character classes. To me, the Preacher is the most fun. That's the one I'm playing with now. They basically get this ability where you could see that in the bottom right, where they charge into battle and they're guaranteed to do a very powerful melee attack. You will, as you play with each character, you will begin to get different types of modifiers on some of your abilities. It doesn't come till a lot later in the game, so I think if anybody was playing this game and just, for me, just like I said, the combat and the gameplay is so fun, it looks beautiful. It resonated very quickly with me, but if you're somebody who's like, well, I need to see more, I think the progression may scare you away, because you're not going to be getting a lot of variety early on. This particular mission, I'm only showing the last, like, maybe, you know, 70% or so of it. This entire mission took us almost 40 minutes to beat. And it wasn't that it was hard. It was just wave after wave of enemy doing the objectives, you know, go grab this widget, go open this door, whatever. It was just that you're fighting so many things, and the levels are so long and detailed, and they loop around themselves, and there's lots of treasures to find, and there's lots of experience points to be had, that sort of thing. But it feels very samey because you don't really have a lot of abilities at your disposal. You're going to have a gun, you're going to have some sort of weapon that you hit people in the face with, and you're going to have one ability. And it's going to be like that for a while. Now, after you do complete missions, you will be granted a litany of different currencies that are all used to progress your character, either in buying better gear, like buying a weapon that makes you hit harder, or buying a different type of weapon altogether. Instead of like a submachine gun, you can pick up like a blunderbuss, or you can pick up a sniper rifle, or other types of weapons. Same with melee. There's axes, swords, it's lots of different things that kind of change how, not only does it look, but slightly different attributes. But those take a long time to unlock. The first mission we played through, I got close to $3,000 in the game. And while it was enough to upgrade very basic things, the stuff that you're really going after is anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000. So again, I told you this mission took almost, you know, like more than half an hour to complete. Keep that in mind, because you may kind of say, oh man, like it's a little grindy at the beginning, and I agree with that. And the developers come out as much and said that they are looking into the progression system. And even though this game is in release at times, I still feel like there's some alpha or beta type gameplay going on here, because it still needs some work. That's why I titled subtitled this video Shank and Jank. Obviously the Shank is just running around and mowing waves of enemies down and destroying them, which is tons of fun. But there is some janky moments. Some of the cutscenes don't play out very well. Sometimes two characters will talk over each other. The hub world isn't very fun. There's not really a lot to see or do. And then as you progress, more stuff will become available. As I said, you will get more modifiers to your abilities. You will get more money so you can begin to upgrade your character. You'll get daily objectives that you have to complete, that sort of thing. But it's going to take a minute to get there. So just keep that in mind, is this ramp up does take a while. But this is a gorgeous and beautiful game, and it plays a lot like Vermintide and Vermintide 2. The difference here is instead of the 4 standard heroes that were in those games, here you're getting that full character creator and customized character creator, essentially, to make the character that you want. So you get to select what your voice sounds like. So the character that I picked, her portrait is there, the voice that she's using is there, her personality is kind of injected into that, and it does make for some much more fun role-playing, I think, than some of the other Vermintide games where you were just stuck with the character that they gave you. The dialogue is at times nonsensical and witty and goofy. I believe it's meant to be that way. Essentially, you are thrown into these impossible situations where you're kind of meant to die, honestly. And it's always like a big surprise when you come back from the mission, like, you can't kill me yet. Now, if you're a fan of the Warhammer universe, which unfortunately I don't know much about other than the fact that it's a very dark and bleak universe where it's kind of like humanity's on their last legs, and you have this guy who's this emperor who basically you kind of treat as like this god king. You know, your character's constantly saying, you know, for the emperor, god emperor. Even the loading screen is like full of doctrine, like, you know, you give your life for us, and you're very... If you're into that kind of like lore, I think the game may have a little bit more fun to it. But most of the time, I think you're going to be running around with your friends, just killing waves of enemies because you need the resources, or, you know, you're at war with this tribe of people or whatever. And that's okay. I'm fine with that. I just don't know. There's not a ton of story element here. Even the missions and the objectives that you have are kind of like, hey, go do thing because game says so. It's like, oh, okay, see you, and off you go. But because the combat is so fluid and so fun, and very quickly you can seamlessly switch between your melee and your ranged, or your super ability, or grenades, and eventually you'll get these little health, you'll find like little health packs and ammo packs. It does keep the combat flowing very well, which is a ton of fun. One of the cool things that the game did implement is this kind of aura system. So essentially, the more characters that are around you, the more passive buffs you get, whether it be to health or to attack speed or to whatever. Each character has one that's different. So it kind of encourages you to actually play together, which I know sounds silly, but again, because these maps are fairly large and mostly linear, it is easy to kind of go off the beaten path and do your own thing. And as a result of that, it's like, oh, okay. So it's cool that they've implemented this system that kind of forces you to stay together to make you a more effective fighting force, which I really appreciate. Graphically, this game is amazing. Now, it does implement that dopey launcher that a lot of older games implement. So before you even run the game, it's going to install this small little launcher, which is kind of like your hub screen, which is going to allow you to set some of your settings and begin to play the game. The problem is the settings that are in the launcher are only a subset of the actual settings in the game. So after you load the game thinking you're done, when you go into the options menu, there's way more stuff there. So I'm not even sure why that early launcher even exists, to be honest. It's a total waste of time, honestly. You're better off going into the settings and tweaking them yourself. Now, this game does support ray tracing. I turned it off because it was just not very well optimized, and it was killing my frame rate for what I thought was very limited visual gain. But there are plenty of options in here. I think you'll be able to find something that runs well in your machine. I'll be really curious when this does make its way over to the consoles, how it looks. Definitely one of the problems with Vermintide and Vermintide 2, it ran very poorly. And I feel like in this game, I'm throwing way more hardware at it than I need to, and I'm still limited on some of my performance at times, particularly with ray tracing. So I wonder how well this game is actually going to be like implemented on a console, because I feel like you're really pushing the envelope already. And I'm running a 2080 Ti, and I just have a feeling that the Xbox Series S in particular is going to really struggle with this experience. It remains to be seen, and I think that might be why they've delayed launching the console version, because I think they're still working those kinks out. Now, in just a few days this game's been out, there've already been a litany of patches for it, and NVIDIA released some new drivers the other day, and it runs way better than it did at launch, which is great, because if I initially had recorded some gameplay footage of earlier class that I was playing, and the Psychers, by the way, she uses these telepathy things to blow people's heads off, which is really cool. But I was playing, and I went back to look at my footage, and I'm like, oh, it was struggling to get maybe 35 frames a second. There was a lot of screen tearing and that sort of thing. It just wasn't a good experience. So after updating everything and playing again today, here's some new footage with the fresh characters that I made, and it looks way better. So I only suspect it's going to get better from here, but I can only review what's available and not what the promise is, and I think that's something to consider. So to kind of wrap up this review and just kind of my final thoughts on this game, it's just a lot of simple kind of beat 'em up fun. I wouldn't expect, groundbreaking story. I wouldn't expect, over-the-top gameplay elements that I'm not showing you here. But I'll say that if you appreciate this type of gameplay that you're seeing, it only gets better from here. The levels are really fun. The enemies are horrific and weird and crazy and deranged, and so are you, and so are the characters you play with. And the missions only get wilder. And, as you begin to upgrade your character and take on some of those harder challenges, because all the levels allow you to kind of like tweak some of those difficulties, you're going to find that you can continue to make it harder and harder and grind and get stronger and more powerful and live that power fantasy that we've seen in every other RPG ever. Lastly, the developer, I think, is actively working on stuff, which I think is a very positive thing. I would advise you to not buy anything from the store right now, because I suspect those things are going to be changed. There is a real money microtransaction store with some interesting character creator modifiers that you can get for some of your costumes and stuff. I think it's a little predatory in the price right now, so I personally wouldn't do that. That's why I said you might want to wait a little bit just to like see if the price does get a little bit more realistic in the future. But love this game, love this game, love this game. That's why I wanted to spend so long talking about it, giving it a proper review, showing off tons of gameplay, running an ultra-wide, 60 frames a second, how smooth it is, how beautiful it looks, how everything just pops and flows and runs so well together. The waves of enemies and the gore and the over-the-top jokes and some of the explosions and the gunplay all feel phenomenal. Can't recommend this game enough. Can't recommend playing it enough. Go play it with your friends. I just hope that when the port eventually does make its way to consoles, it lives up to this, because I suspect a lot of people don't have high-end PCs that can run this right now. So this game is probably not getting all the TLC it should be getting, but remains to be seen. That'll wrap up today's video review. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to get back to playing Warhammer because I love it. It's fun, it's fun, it's fun. And that'll be it for the video for today, and more to follow. Have a wonderful day. Take care of yourselves. And until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.